What is going on, guys? So I just want to bring you guys up to date on what I've done. So right now as we speak, I have configured everything we need actually. So if we go to GitHub, for instance, and go here and say Django graphql chat, so we have this chat, the back end of this application, and I've updated, so everything actually is working now with the latest Python version. So, and then also actually I just pushed React chat application for this, what we have done so far. And somebody is basically is maybe asking, how does this application look as of now? So let us actually see how this looks. So let us go slash login, because we might need actually to log in. Okay. Okay, let me first come back here. I think I know what is actually happening. So I think I need to add provider here. Okay. Okay, so you see what I've done right now so far is I've updated this thing. I added some style to push this here, because whenever it was taking the whole screen, it was not looking that impressive. And I also added a way to log in, because if you see, if I go to login, let me remove that alert, because I was getting some weird error, and I used that alert to debug. And then even before I could use it, I figured out where the error was. So let me remove it. So I added a login functionality and registration functionality to this thing, except I haven't added actually a way to just refresh the messages, but login functionality works well, and we are now able to load chats from the application. So what have I done? So let me check you through what I've done very fast, so that if you are free to get this code as it is right now actually, but if you prefer learning, then it's really nice. So let us go. What did I do first? So inside our styling, because that is what we were doing inside styling, let us go to our app.js. So I added this class to our wrapper, and I also added routing, which I think this is not in any way introduction to React actually. So I expect most of you guys to actually know already how to do that. So I did not handle, so I removed some redundant code actually. But what I did is I added this style just to encapsulate everything. So this is responsible for pushing actually the data to the center in large screen, and giving it that margin that is somewhat good. And then I added routing, and then by default we have the home page, and we have the login, and we have the registration page. So what and how does these other pages look like? So I have inside components, we have out, which has login. It's really very basic in terms of the form. You see, I have just a form that on submits to a given place. And then I added this very basic thing, also same to registration. I have the same thing, a very basic form that asks, exactly, this one asks for more fields: username, email, password one, and password confirmation. That is it. So, and then another thing, I went ahead and configured the store to work for this. So what I did is I came to the store and I added actions for out and also reducers for out. You remember in the first video we did just add this index and this index, but right, I told you, I promised you that we'll be adding for out. So don't say I didn't say. So we have this update user. So basically, as by the name, this one is called, this action will always, update user action will always be triggered when this function is called, passing in the user. And then we have for update token, which will trigger this action update token on token when token is being called. And then we have another one for update user, which will then call update user success. So this one is the reason I did put this one here is because we are dispatching this method in a different, we are dispatching this method in a different place where we have user at times, and this one is responsible for that, for just triggering updating user. So this one can be called from another place with you. I think you guys can understand. So and then we have another one for refresh token, which is responsible for refreshing token, but I don't think I've implemented this functionality for checking out and then finishing authentication, which it takes in data that has token, refresh token, and the user. This is function that will be called on successful login. So I'm still starting with just the basic React and Redux. I don't want to first go to Apollo because as of now, I just want to believe that most of you guys don't know Apollo. So that is it. It's fine. You will see that Apollo is really easy. So that is it. So on these, when these actions are triggered, as you all always know, they will call a function that is always inside reducers that you passed. So the reducers should always be able to update the state. So we have the initial state for the authentication, which has token and has user. So that is simple. And then we have a function that is responsible for updating the user state. So this is it. It will be taking in user from the action. So we first checking that the action type is update user, because I actually here I can also just come here and replace, where was it? I did this before I realized that I could mess up some spelling, but I think in out here actually I should use just the same as I am doing inside reducers over here. I should use this action type dot update user and update token, but it's simple. When update user event is triggered, then it will come and call update user. Update token, it will come and call update token, and then I'm updating the state with the responsible with the data. So for here I can just come and say return, because I realized that I've not actually handled this. So we will just return and then update object, and then we are taking in the initial state, and then we want the token to action to be actually action the token, and then let us just close this out. So it's, why is it, what am I missing? Let me just format these first and see what I'm missing. Or let me just check these actually, and then here I can say token, and then just remove these because I thought that was fine. I don't know what I still don't know what I was missing, but this is it. But now instead of user, it's token. Let us just go here and make sure that we are passing it the same way. So is it, we are passing as token? So yeah, it's token actually. So that is good because we are passing token as token, so we can manage to get it. So whenever you are checking if user is authenticated, then you can use the state of token so that you can redirect and navigate depending on that. So that is so simple. For instance, I can just come here app.js and add a router navigation so that when user is not authenticated, then we take, instead of showing this page, then we take them to, what do we call, to login page, so that they are authenticated, and then on authentication we can bring them back to home page, which is totally fine. So that is just basic Redux actually. Redux I know can sometimes be stressful, and maybe I've not done it justice by going through it very fast, but that is it. So another thing we have is Apollo. So Apollo is dealing with GraphQL. So if you can see right now, we have actually the server running. So if I go to 127/8000, oh, full colon 8000/GraphQL, Then you see we have a GraphQL server that has some docs. It has queries, mutation, and subscription. So I think this one is also something that I should not cover because I did in the first video series of this thing when I was building with Vue.js. So the first one was plain Django. It doesn't touch any Vue.js. So even if you don't like Vue.js for some reason, still surprised why anyone would hate it, then you can go and check the first video. I don't touch anything to do with React, so that is the good thing. With Vue I tried as much as possible. So, and then another thing we want to do is now configure for our front end. We have the backend running and it's using GraphQL, but our front end should use a client-side GraphQL to be able to send queries and receive data and process as we want. So instead of building that thing, because it's so I don't think anyone would manage to build what Apollo has done over the years. So it's really nice. So let us check. So I actually created everything. If you know something, I created all the queries and the file is over here. So even if you don't want to use the same techniques I use inside, you might want to at least use these queries and maybe update some things depending on what you want, because this one is almost something that anyone would use. So it's inside and it's called queries.js. So going inside index.js, you realize that I have imported some few things. So let us check what Apollo guys are saying. So let us see React Graph Apollo GraphQL. So if we go inside this link and you see get started, so they are telling you that the first thing you need to do is install Apollo client and GraphQL. And inside index.js, import the client and then set up the client. And over here, make sure that the URL is your URL. And then you can start using the client as you want. And I bet most of the time, some of the methods that they provide will maybe not meet exactly what you want, and you might want to use these, but in most cases, we will not be going with that, but we will be going with something as simple as they have shown over here. But that is it. So you see, these one are the queries that I constructed and I told you. So after you import this client, actually, so after you import these things, create the client here, and then we have something called Apollo provider, which is a replacement, is supposed to be a replacement for the provider, but for some reason, as you see in the start, as we were starting this video, when I tried removing provider and using store inside here, it failed terribly. So just make sure that you and cross both of them or wherever, and then this Apollo provider will pass in the client props to all our project, and inside our project, the same way you would normally just use the state and store, then we can start using use query and use mutation and wherever, without stressing of setting up the client and web sockets for each of them, every request we are making. So that is it actually. But we know in our case, we are not just doing HTTP, because this first part shows you how to set up just a basic GraphQL to query for HTTP. So if you are going to be fetching just normal data, then this is actually everything you might need, except you might need to add some few things for authentication, which is simple. But in our case, what we want to do is add subscription. So let us see how subscription is done. So subscription, you are supposed to install some 1-2 things, install these actually, and then come over here, import some few things, and then set up the HTTP link. Now we are using HTTP link, as you can see, because we are splitting WebSockets and HTTP link, and then we are finally joining them both, and then we just proceed to do the normal things. So if you need authentication in your client, then they're showing you how to do it. Executing subscriptions, they're showing you that you can execute subscription, because at some point we will be doing it. And then finally we have one thing to do. Actually, what is it? Oh, okay, authentication. Actually, let me just show you that in my code, because in our case we'll be using authentication. So what I did actually is everything they said. So I imported these and everything they said. And then this one is the store, which is not important. But you see in the store now I combined reduce, I added for the authentication, which is here. I imported from the out. And then I created the WebSocket link. And then I created the HTTP link. I added, so you use something called set context to set some headers to your HTTP, to your requests. So for instance, in my case, I know that my request, I will always need some requests such as fetching the users, fetching the chats for a user. We will need to be authenticated to fetch those information. So that is why we are passing headers and we are adding authorization. And then we are saying that if token exists, then we are adding the prefix, which is JWT, the default for authentication in GraphQL, Django, Graphene. And then we are saying that the value is the token which we are storing in local storage during the authentication process. And if the token does not exist, then that is what we are doing there. We are just saying, okay, nothing. And then we are combining them both. And then we are creating the link over here. So, and then the provider contains the store, and then the Apollo provider contains the client, and then everything is the same as we had done before. Our app is inside here. So what happens is we are passing this client to our components. So for instance, if we go inside our app.js, I told you that we sometime might need to use. So you see, when you use effect, then you can use client.create. This client is this. So you see here, I did add export because I figured, I knew this, that the moment I just reached here, I knew that sometime I need to do this, because for instance, I did not know how I could manage to pass the data to the store, and I did what I knew the simplest. So because I want on page load, I want to fetch the user, and when I use effect, then how do I then pass the data down to the store? I know I can use .then, but is it real? I don't know even if using .then should work. I don't think it should work, but this is it. So this one method, you use client.query and then the get user, and then on .then I'm fetching the client.query, and then after I get the response, I'm saying response.me. So this query, I think I've already mentioned that they are inside here. For instance, get user is over here. I'm passing me, and then I'm getting ID, username, email, and whichever information you might need, you can add there. And then after getting that, I'm saying that set user to be the user that was just loaded. So that is actually responsible for, you see, whenever I just refresh the page, not here, but here, you see, every time I refresh the page, I still manage to get my user showing because of this, because I'm able to set the user. And then yep, I think actually that should work. So maybe here actually we can just say again return token, because I think we need token, and then token is that, and then we can just say this, and then this token we will finally use here, so that we check if token does not exist, then or are expired, because we can call a function here also to check that the token has expired or not, because right now I'm not storing actually the time that the token expires, but we'll need to add that. I was just trying to make this work. So that is it. So this is the way to use a client, but there is another way. When we added these index.js here, when we added these props to our component, then it created something awesome for us. Actually, it created all these configurations to our project. So our project as of now knows when we are use queries to fetch data, then it knows that it needs to go to this URL. When we are doing subscription, then it needs to subscribe to this endpoint. So let us see one implementation of that. So if we go to our component, with registration, So we can afford to do, so when you use mutation, actually mutation, so the anything that actually submits data, maybe you're authenticating, you're submitting a form and whatever, you use mutation. So you can you can use, I don't know, it's like normally people, I see people trying to log in using get request, which is so awkward. So but this one is like simulation of post request, and getting is simulation of get request. Though in GraphQL all requests are post, so but they are at least trying to separate, to split them, so that you know that whenever you are submitting things, so use mutation is used to, for instance, login. So you see, use mutation by now knows everything we need. So you use a function here, and you can afford actually to pass some few things such as loading and wherever here. But I think in my case I don't need that, so I did login here, and then that I'm saying on login, and then I'm waiting for it. I'm saying then, because it can return as well, return data that you could pass in here. You will see in their documentation, if you go through the link I just showed you here, actually in there you see mutations, the way they are doing. You see you can manage to pass data, loading and error, so you can use it this way. But for me, yeah. So handle form actually is what is submitted over here, and then handle form will call this use mutation function, and then I'm passing in the variables because login query expects some variables, the email and password. And then after that one, I'm calling the finish authentication method over here, which will set the update the store. This is exact thing that I'm also doing for registration, exactly, actually, except now, you know, it's a different endpoint, so it expects different things. So you see here, actually it still has this, but you can decide to remove if you are going to do it the same way I did over here. But if you are submitting a form that you are handling everything in the same point, then you don't need this other part. Actually, it will be even better to remove this and use the same way that they had shown you here, to say data loading, and in case of errors, show the errors that way. And then another thing is, let's see, how am I getting the charts? Because right now you see, whenever you refresh this page, you also get the charts. Because if you remember the first video, I created a chat with admin. I don't know if I showed you, but I created a chat with admin. So this is where I'm loading the charts. So I'm using use query. So this is like use effect, but yeah, it's called on page load, or whenever, I don't know if it's called when state change. I haven't looked into each much, but I think it's called on page load, that I'm 100% sure. And then now it gets again the data. You just pass the query that you want to be called, and it will go and get the data, and it has the error and the loading. So what you did is actually this is something I did. You don't mind what I did here, but I was trying to use, because you remember in the dates we are showing the date for the message here, so that is why I'm doing here, so that the month normally in JavaScript gives you the number, but I'm trying to get the name. So that is it. On loading, and then I get the data. So the data will contain the charts and then edges, because we used relay nodes in graphene. So that is what I'm doing over here. And then getting participants, which is, you still remember, participants will be several users. So I'm doing filtering so that I don't show user, because for instance, the participants of this chat is Kim Rop and admin, but I don't want to show Kim Rop and admin because they are two participants. So I'm just saying that, okay, just show me participants of that chat. So what we can in fact do is just say that get first if chat dot node dot is group, because I think it allows group, then show the group name. I think actually we can manage to do that, because we can say actually, yep, here. I think we can do it here actually. Yep, here. Then show the group name. So we can say that is this a group. Please, if you haven't watched the first video of Django, then go and watch, because it will be tiresome and almost ridiculous also for me to just go through this. Yeah, but again, here you can just decide also, instead of showing the group name, I don't know what should happen actually here. Should we maybe list user participants for the group name? Yeah, I think we can list, if it's a group, then we list maybe the first 3 users in that chat. If it's a group, yep, we can do that. So let me just make sure that first this one didn't break. So if not chat.group, then you show the chat.group name. I think it's supposed to be even called name. I can just say .group. Yep, you can say that chat.node.name. That's simple. Else just show the username. So for this user is not edited, so that's why first name is not being shown, but it should be able to show the first name and the last name. First name actually only here, and then show the username. So I think it's clear how the data is being fetched and how I configure this application. So in the next video, let us now start building on subscription, because that is the most concrete part of what we can manage to do. So again, if you want to get this code, the link is here, and also the backend is somewhere around there. I think I showed you, but they'll also be in the description. So I'll make sure that I include them in the description. So thank you very much, guys, and have a nice time.